Okay, so I'm pretty damn late talking about Outer Worlds when the game's been out for so long, but the game came out around the same time as Death Stranding, and I was covering Death Stranding, reviewing that game, so I just didn't get much of a chance to delve into Outer Worlds until more recently, and holy crap, you guys, I really love this game. I'm only 10 hours in so far. I've done the intro planet and gone a little beyond that. I've been doing all the side quests, and comparisons to Bethesda games will be inevitable. Right, I mean, it's clear that this was like a spiritual successor to New Vegas. Obsidian admitted as much in one of their interviews when they said that, yeah, this was their intention, that they want to give people who miss that type of experience a game to look forward to. And the end result is that we've got a game right here that makes me miss Bethesda a whole lot less. Bethesda had sort of the market cornered when it comes to the types of games that they make, but here comes Obsidian, and once again, they're showing that they can do this better than Bethesda can. And, you know, I hope that Bethesda gets their crap together and does a great job with Starfield, but if they don't, I wouldn't mind looking forward to Obsidian's work. Their next take on this kind of open world structure with, I don't know, Outer Worlds 2, I think that'll probably happen given the success of this first game. But yeah, I want to talk about why I was so entranced by this game, why 10 hours in I'm already thinking this is the Bethesda experience, but even better with that Obsidian twist, that Obsidian flavor. Why I think Obsidian can actually fill a void that Bethesda might leave behind better than Bethesda can in some regards. So, where I really think Outer Worlds trumps Bethesda's past endeavors is the writing. It is such an important part of any RPG, and that's where Obsidian absolutely shines here, and this is made apparent by just how the entire intro planet had me feeling a lot of moral conflicts about some of the decisions I made, more so than any Bethesda game in the past. Bethesda games have always been these great sandboxes where you could do a lot of gameplay chaos, right? Especially with mods. But Obsidian, they feel like they're telling just a more nuanced and serious story that you can really get more invested in. So for those who don't know about this intro mission, and if you want to avoid spoilers, back away from the video, but I want to talk about the conflict between the deserters versus Edgewater. Edgewater is this town that is corporate run, and the deserters are people who stepped away from the town and started their own little civilization, their own little town essentially, this remote area to get away from that corporate influence, to get away from this town that was focused on labor and working people to death as if they were robots and drones and not treating people like humans, and there's this sense of misery all throughout this Edgewater town. And so that's the conflict between those two. And the main quest in regards to those two factions revolves around you having to go to this power plant and transfer power to one faction or the other. And whatever choice you make will doom the other faction. At a glance, it seems pretty simple, right? Fuck the corporations, let's just give the power to the deserters. But as I kept exploring the world, the game, the towns, as I kept talking to the denizens of Edgewater and the deserters, I began to realize that this issue is actually more complicated than met the eye. Speaking to denizens of Edgewater, I spoke to NPCs who were talking about just how Edgewater saved them in a way and how Edgewater provided structure. And yes, there's the corporate influence, but there was some kind of stability there. Whereas the deserters, you know, a lot of those folks were harmed by the corporate influence in Edgewater, and that's why they departed and joined this kind of like a rebellion faction, essentially. And that resulted in Edgewater becoming unstable because so many people are leaving Edgewater in favor of the deserters. So you meet this guy called Reed Thompson, and he tasks you with transferring power away from the deserters and to Edgewater so that the deserters will have no choice but to come back, and that way the workflow of this town can continue as normal and the stability of that town can be maintained. But then when you meet the deserters, you meet Adelaine McDevitt, who is the leader of the deserters, and she tells you all these horrible things that she experienced as a result of the corporate control of Edgewater. I think it was her son who met an untimely death as a result of Edgewater and the higher up than the corporate negligence. And so she clearly has a personal stake in all this, but also she wants like a better life for the deserters and wants all people within Edgewater to come over to the deserter side of things and live what she believes to be a life of freedom away from the corporations. And then when you talk to the deserter NPCs, they tell you about just the horrible things that these corporations have done to the denizens of Edgewater and why they left. But then you have the Edgewater people who did manage to find some kind of life there, and they talk about how they were saved by Edgewater in some ways. And so now you're thinking, oh my god, there are people on both sides who are benefiting from both towns, and they both make some compelling cases. And then at the very end of that quest, you eventually have to make the choice. You go to the plant and you flip the switch and you go deserters or you go Edgewater. You have to decide which faction gets all the power. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go with deserters. And then Parvati, who is one of your companions, comes in and she tries to make the case for Edgewater, talks about how cruel it would be to sort of take what is, yes, a rudimentary life, but a stable life, all those people living in Edgewater, and just to pull that rug under them and kind of have them just lose that stability and have them change their way of life, and just the cruelty behind that. And then Parvati made the case of Adeline McDevitt. She has a personal stake in it. Her son died, and what if this is just, vendetta? Do you want to be a part of something that could just destroy the lives of so many people, and all for what could be a personal vendetta type of situation, rather than good intentions? And now it took me like a solid 30 minutes of sort of walking around this place where I have to flip that switch before I finally decided to go with deserters, because my train of thought was that, yes, it's going to be rough tidings for the Edgewater denizens in the moment right now, but hopefully over time they can kind of realize that, break the cycle rather than being complacent to the corporate structure, maybe move away from that and find a life of freedom eventually, that hopefully they'll eventually realize that this is a good thing for them. But frankly, I really don't know. I don't know if I'm being naive by thinking that way. And all of these different thoughts are running through my mind. And then when I picked the deserters and the power got transferred to them, I went back to Edgewater, seeing the denizens just kind of wondering what the hell is going on, seeing the whole town powered down essentially with people being unable to continue their lives. It was kind of heart-wrenching. And then I went and talked to Reed Thompson, who assigned the initial quest. And I love that whole conversation, because he initially came off as this like corporate douchebag, and he on some level still is. But as you have that conversation, you can see that he's truly heartbroken to see this town he genuinely called home, that in his own way he thought he was doing the right thing for. He's just there pissed off because he actually cared about the betterment of Edgewater. He wanted this town to thrive. And while I personally thought Reed Thompson was in a lot of ways misguided, I also understood that this is kind of the only way he knew how to live. And at that point, he went from feeling like one of those typical villain type characters to like a genuine three-dimensional person who I wouldn't like to meet in real life, but I also understood where he was coming from. And at the end of it all, I didn't know if I had made the right choice. I have contemplated going back to a previous save file and going with Edgewater instead, but I just decided to stick with the choice that I made and seeing where that goes. That's what I love about Obsidian storytelling. It's just multiple layers of moral conundrums where you consider both sides of a situation, where it's not just black and white like that Fallout 3 quest where you could choose between nuking the town or saving it, which was like pretty black and white. If you nuke a town, you're kind of you're an evil son of a bitch, right? But with this, it's just no matter which way you go, there are pros and there are cons, and you just kind of have to go with whatever choice you feel is right based on your own ideals and whatnot, I suppose, based on the information that you have. These moral gray areas, I think Outer Worlds, just within the first few hours, does a great job exploring, and I was kind of blown away by that. And that is what ultimately, I think, elevates this game. The writing and also the dialogue I talked about the dialogue with Reed Thompson that made me see him in a whole different way. And that's further bolstered by these great performances across the board. And these performances are so important to make these characters believable, because if the characters are believable, then the moral conundrums become believable. I actually felt for Reed Thompson. I felt for Parvati when she made her case. And it all creates this immersive environment where the world and the consequences feel real. And I had genuine emotions and reactions to what was going on in the game. And I was taken aback. I just wasn't expecting that. And then beyond that, we have, the gameplay and all of these different things. The moment-to-moment gameplay in Outer Worlds is fine. It's fun. It plays a lot like Fallout 3, New Vegas, and Fallout 4. It is a first-person RPG, a lot of shooting, a lot of melee combat, a wide variety of guns within the categories of light, heavy, and energy guns. I use energy guns a lot because the weapons there are cooler. You can actually do stealth with energy guns, I find. They just don't detect you when you shoot someone from afar with an energy gun. But with a light or heavy gun, the enemies will become aware of you even if you stealth attack somebody and kill them. Also, energy weapons have this cool-ass pistol that shoots 3 shots in one, and I feel like a freaking gunslinger, and I love that weapon. Overall, shooting feels fine. It's functional. I wish it had more impact to it, but it works. It does the job that it's intended to do. It's not stellar, but it's fine. I do like that you can modify your weapons via the crafting table, and I do like the replacement for VATS, which is essentially a slowdown bullet time type of mechanic. As for the world itself, Outer Worlds isn't this giant open world like is the case with Bethesda games. It is basically multiple small to medium-sized sandboxes, and I'm actually fine with that. I actually prefer density over volume, and Outer Worlds is dense enough in content, and so the worlds felt fully fleshed out enough, and the different worlds also allows Outer Worlds to explore more environmental variety. One of the cool features of Outer Worlds is that you can travel between planets, and each planet feels different enough. And sometimes you go to these hubs that are like, you go to like a ship, for example, and there's a town within that ship, and that has its own unique vibe to it. And then there's other planets with its own flora and fauna and different types of creatures. So visually varied, visually lush and detailed. Not the most technically advanced graphically, but just a lot of cool artistic designs and directions that create a unique sort of feel to the universe that is Outer Worlds. I'm really happy to see that this RPG system is points-based, not, the Fallout 4 weird and unwieldy leveling system that focused too much on perks and that structured everything kind of really weirdly. It's that combination of putting points in attributes, skills, and interesting perks. And going back to the topic of dialogue, I love that there's no dialogue wheel like they did it with Fallout 4. It's actually just, dialogue options as you'd normally expect them. Everything fully written out, you know exactly what you're going to say. Whereas with Fallout 4, the dialogue wheel offered these very vague prompts, and when you expect your character to say a line one way, they actually say it another way. I also love how much influence your various skills have on your ability to persuade people. It's not just about persuasion, intimidation, and lying, but also if you invest in skills like engineering, that might play a role in a dialogue option involving engineering topics. Same thing with a skill like science, that could contribute to you being able to persuade someone using scientific knowledge, and there's just stuff like that scattered across the dialogue tree of Outer Worlds. And I should also mention that Outer Worlds feels like it's a more polished, more refined, less buggy, more stable game than previous Bethesda games I've played. So just across the board, Outer Worlds is what I would want out of a Bethesda game, except this is an Obsidian game, and they've taken that formula and they took it to the next level with really impressive writing and some great dialogue and some awesome performances. The gameplay of Outer Worlds, the moment-to-moment stuff, it's just fine. It's not mind-blowing, but what elevates Outer Worlds, I think, to the next level is this sense of immersion that comes with a believable universe, with believable characters, with a lot of cool lore details and a lot of great interactions, player choices with consequences that you're emotionally attached to, and these consequences feel really tangible, like they're actually a big deal. And all of that is sort of married with solid gameplay that acts more as a vehicle towards great storytelling. And to me, this all just goes to show that AAA, AA, these labels don't mean shit when it comes to making the best game possible. Obsidian out Bethesda with Outer Worlds, in my opinion. If this is what Obsidian can pull off, and this is just their first attempt at returning to a Fallout New Vegas type formula since then, I can only imagine what they can pull off with Outer Worlds 2 when, they refine that engine, when they have the resources from Microsoft's backing. Microsoft purchased Obsidian, and so Outer Worlds 2 is going to have the backing of that publisher. And this is not to say that I don't wish Bethesda well with something like Starfield. I hope Starfield will be a return to form, that it's going to blow us away, and that it's going to bring Bethesda back from the rock bottom reputation that they've hit. Hopefully Starfield will be a redemption story and we can have, the best of both worlds. Great games from Bethesda and from Obsidian. But what I'm saying right now is that if Bethesda were to botch Starfield somehow, if it were not to be a game that lives up to what we expect from Bethesda single-player endeavors, I have Obsidian games to look forward to, and they seem to know what they're doing with this style and genre of games. So yeah, just all around, so far I have nothing but good things to say about Outer Worlds, and I cannot wait to keep playing this game, to finish it, see where other quest lines will take me. Can't wait to explore other worlds, find all this great loot, new types of weapons. I'm just having such a blast. This is so refreshing and such a relief. And it should be noted that Outer Worlds sold incredibly well. It went beyond expectations in terms of sales, according to the publisher. And I think that is because so many people like myself were looking forward to an experience like this. And there was this void that Bethesda left behind over the past few years that Obsidian filled in with this game, and so people flocked to it and they loved it because it's a genuinely good game. So kudos to Obsidian. I am looking forward to diving back in, and I wish them nothing but the best. I hope they continue this streak. Anyway, I've said all there is to say about Outer Worlds. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the game if you've played it. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.